Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy DeYoung. Welcome to Prophecy Today video. This week on my radio broadcast, we talked about geopolitical, Middle Eastern, and European issues that affect our world today, and they are setting the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. If you'd like to listen to the interviews we had with outstanding broadcast partners, go to our website, prophecytoday.com, and double-click on PTRN, Prophecy Today Radio Network. It's radio when you want it, at your convenience, and when you can listen to the interviews. And by the way, pass along to your friends a message about PTRN so they can hear these conversations. But here on Prophecy Today video, we want to take a look at the upcoming national elections here in America. In my conversations with Colonel Bob McGinnis, I talked about America's leadership role in the world and how these elections may affect that.
Well, I think it's a very important election. Basically, it will stop, if the Republicans take over the House and the Senate, the president's radical agenda. In fact, I'll probably write about that this coming week. What can a Republican-controlled Congress do in regards to President Obama's agenda in foreign affairs and national security? Certainly you have a arms agreement with the Russians that's on the Senate's plate. You have a lot of funding. You have the social experiments like homosexuals in the military that is still being considered, that's in the Congress's plate. You have foreign aid. Do we continue to pour a lot of money into various places? So a lot could be done, certainly in the purview that I work, national security, foreign affairs, for a Congress turnover. They could really stymie what this president is trying to accomplish.
Colonel Bob McGinnis from Washington, D.C. In Israel, Israel Madad, our special broadcast partner there with the Middle East News Update, said that Israel is not the 51st state, but what happens in the elections in America is important to the Jewish state.
Well, from what I've been seeing, it's obvious that this is very much the issues that are being challenged by the Obama administration, or they are being challenged by, I should say better, are more internal economic, industrial, health issues that are very much the concern of the average Joe in the street American. The major high-profile foreign affairs issues, which would then include Israel, are very much in the background. However, I will not be sorry to see Mr. Obama's administration getting a nudge there from the voters, because I do think in the background of many of them is the, I'm not going to say fear, because I don't think Americans fear, but Americans do get anxious about exactly who their president is and what is driving his fundamental political ideology and his agenda. Is it truly American-rooted, or is it perhaps a universalist type of approach, which the American people wasn't asked to vote on? And I think it's a legitimate issue. However, those elections are not quite on that basis, and I don't think it's fair for politicians to run away from a one election and claim that the electorate gave them a mandate to do things they did not discuss during that election period.
Israel Madad speaking from that part of the world that is key in the Middle East, the state of Israel. Dr. Rob Congdon covers the European Union for us, and Rob tells us that the European people are somewhat disillusioned with the current administration and are looking forward to the elections in the United States.
Well, I think more properly is what is the people of the European Union will think, which will be reflected by the leadership. They're confused. They don't understand how 2 years ago America was such a land in their vision of hope and change that would be positive, how the American public can reverse itself so quickly based on the current polls for the election. Therefore, they're a little confused. They were real hopeful. They have really bought into the media line and really thought there were going to be positive changes. So they are struggling. On the other hand, they are very concerned with the American financial direction and the steps being taken to correct it, because most Europeans who are in power believe that is the wrong direction. So they're perplexed. They're going to watch it, but they're unsure what it means for their future, and I think that's their big concern.
Dr. Rob Congdon, covering the European Union for us here on Prophecy Today. Well, let me just remind you of one thing. Politics, or in other words, human government, controls this world today, and will do so in the future as well, to have God's prophetic plan unfold. More on that in just a moment, but let's think about human government for a moment. God brought human government into this world. That's Genesis chapter 9 and verse 6. It was after the flood. God in Genesis 9:1 told Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, his 3 sons, and their 4 wives, to be fruitful, multiply, and re-people the earth. Then God set in place human government, Genesis 9:6. Now, this is the command to deal with capital punishment. Somebody murders somebody for no reason at all, then they must give their life. Human government has as its ultimate capital punishment. That was the establishment of human government as one of the institutions that God put in place here on this earth. When you stop to think about it, God has used human government down through history. I think about the Egyptians. Remember, Israel, under the leadership of Jacob, went into the land of Egypt because of a famine, and the Egyptians held them in bondage for over 400 years. By the way, that was a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. The Lord told Abraham in the 15th chapter of the book of Genesis that would take place, that the children of Israel would be in a foreign land for over 400 years. The Egyptians, this was a human government fulfilling the plan of God. The Assyrians, they took captive Israel. That would be the 10 tribes who went to the north. 1 Kings chapter 11, the 12 tribes, they separated. 10 went to the north, and they became known as Israel. 2 stayed in the south. They were Judah. Rehoboam in the south, Jeroboam in the north. And a number of years after this division of the 12 tribes, the Assyrians captured the 10 tribes of the north. Israel took them into captivity. And then in 586 B.C., the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, he took the 2 tribes remaining in the south, that would be Judah, but then he took the entire world under his control, under the Babylonian Empire. That would bring all 12 tribes back together. You see how God was using human government to accomplish his will? First of all, the Babylonians took the Jews out of the land because God told them the rest of the land, give it a Sabbath every 7 years. They did not do that. And so the Lord had human government play a role in accomplishing his will, but it brought all 12 tribes back together. Ezra chapter 2 tells us that all 12 tribes, when the Medes and the Persians defeated the Babylonians, were together in Israel. You've got to look down through history at the Roman Empire. That is an absolute. In the time of Herod the Great, Jesus Christ was born. He came into this world. It was because of the Roman Empire and its stability across the world, its road system, its current common currency, and also its common language. They were able to spread the gospel. But let me just remind you, the Roman Empire was used to accomplish God's will for the children of Israel. General Titus in 70 A.D. came in by command of his father, the Roman emperor. He destroyed the temple, devastated the city of Jerusalem, and dispersed the Jews to the 4 corners of the earth. Now that was fulfillment of the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, when God told Moses, tell the Jewish people, they don't obey me, I will scatter them to the 4 corners of the earth. The Egyptians, well, that's where Israel went, and that was the first time they left the promised land, but that was to Egypt. And then the Babylonians, well, they went out to Babylon. That was the second time the Jews were taken out of the land, but that was to Babylon. With the Roman Empire dispersing the Jews to the 4 corners of the earth, the prophecy of Deuteronomy 28 was fulfilled, God using human government. How do we deal with human government? We as Christians, Romans chapter 13 says God puts in power those he wants to be in power. That does not mean we fail to exercise our franchise to vote, but God has control of human government. And we must obey. That's what Romans chapter 13 says. You ever read 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 to 4? I exhort thee, therefore, first of all, supplication, prayers, intercession, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings, for all that are in authority. We to pray for those in authority, political power. Why? Well, that will give us an opportunity to live a quiet, peaceable, godly life. Verse 3, For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God our Savior, verse 4, who will have all men to be saved to come into the knowledge of the truth. You see, human government should allow us to be able to live a life that will allow us to win people to Jesus Christ. And that's our responsibility as far as human government. But let's think thirdly about how God will use human government in the future. Revelation 17:17, it says that God placed in the hearts of world leaders. These were lost world leaders. It was the revived Roman Empire to accomplish his will. His will in chapter 17 of the book of Revelation was to destroy the false church that had been established. Hey, take a moment and look quickly at the context of Revelation 17:17. God using human government in the future to accomplish his will. I said Revelation 17, the revived Roman Empire. Those are 10 horns talked about in Revelation 17. And the 10 horns representing the revived Roman Empire that will come to power in the last days. They will lead a false church in Rome, Italy, chapter 17. Chapter 18, well, that's a false economy that will be headquartered in the city of Babylon, economic power under the Antichrist. Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17 says, those alive at that time will take a mark of the beast to be able to buy or sell. How can you make somebody take a mark, an identification mark, to be able to buy or sell? How about an economic crisis with one coming to power, the Antichrist, in Babylon, the location of Babylon, modern-day Iraq, where that economic power center will be. By the way, the last thing to happen before Jesus Christ comes back is that economic power center, Babylon, is destroyed. That's Revelation chapter 16, verses 17 and following. God using human government to accomplish his will. And if indeed the last thing to happen is what we see on the horizon very close at hand, remember the rapture takes place before all of this unfolds. And having said that, nothing left for me to say except let's keep looking up until